Ladies and gentlemen, gender non-conforming and trans deities, welcome to the Hoodoisie. Thank you for tuning in. Sit back, get possessed, grab a bottle of your favorite spirit. I got Lambrusco tonight. Charles, what you got? Henny. Cassandra, you got anything?
Sangria.
And Mark?
Coffee.
Mark got that coffee. You better watch out, boy. Thank you for tuning in to Get Radical in the time of Corona with Chicago's favorite and only underground radical live and live stream news show. During the time of Corona, we teamed up with Southside Weekly to bring you Pandemic Issues. Pandemic Issues is a weekly series that we bring to you every Wednesday that brings you the stories and analysis that mainstream media in the city is not. I'm your host, Ricardo Gamboa, or Ricardo Gamboa. Pronouns are they, them, theirs, but mothers everywhere just call me fine as fuck. Can you blame them? I cannot. I'll let my co-hosts introduce themselves. Take it away.
Charles Preston, Injustice Watch's audience engagement manager, activist, journalist. Take it away, Jackie.
Hey everyone, this is Jackie Serrato, editor-in-chief of the Southside Weekly. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And Ricardo, that's a badass shirt, by the way.
Hey, you know, no borders, no bars. That's what we're talking about on this show. We focus on the no bars part, but that's what we are getting into today. With our guests today, we are so excited to have them here. We got John Burge, torture survivor and staff member of the Chicago Torture Justice Center, living legend Mark Clements. We also got the co-founder and director of programs at the Chicago Community Bond Fund, Matt McLaughlin. And we got CPS teacher and widow of deceased Cook County detainee Nicholas Lee, the third detainee to be taken by COVID virus. Let's give it up for Cassandra Greer Lee. We are so excited to have them all here today. This has been a really rough week. If you look at the headlines, it has been a week in which we are reminded that even during COVID-19, Black life is especially precarious. And I'm not just talking about the fact that 60% of all COVID-19 deaths in Chicago have been Black people, but also Amy Cooper, Karen, another terrorizing Karen who tried to call the cops on Christian Cooper, who is a very handsome gay Black man, and apparently a bird watcher who was just trying to get her to put a leash on her dog. And also George Floyd, who was murdered by and let's be real, right, who was murdered by the Minnesota police. And tonight, we can't talk about race or violence without talking about prison. And that's exactly what we're focused on in the first part of a two-part series called Locked Up During Lockdown that focuses on incarceration during COVID-19. So let's get started. How's everyone feeling today?
Doing pretty well. I can't complain.
Let's start by putting some stories to statistics. I think one of the things that we've been seeing during COVID-19 is a bombardment of headlines that, you know, some of them talk about how, you know, we've been freeing all these incarcerated people. There was one a couple of weeks ago, and some contradictory headlines to that, because in early April, the New York Times deemed Cook County Jail as the top U.S. hotspot of the coronavirus. They termed it the epicenter of the virus. And what's heartbreaking is that this is preventable. Cassandra, you know that reality a little bit deeper than most people. Can you share with us briefly your husband Nicholas Lee's story?
Yes, my husband's ordeal started the second week of March at the Cook County Jail. He noticed that there were 2 sick inmates on his tier. My husband was not in a cell unit. He was in a dormitory style unit where he shared a common space with 50 other inmates or 50 other gentlemen. These 2 inmates were on this dormitory unit with him. And this is when the coronavirus first became, well, it's not when it first became known. It's when everyone really started to find out about it and it became really serious. We wasn't really knowledgeable about it. So, and I know my husband wasn't at all. So I would keep him abreast of what Mayor Lightfoot and Governor Pritzker would say every day during their news briefings. And my husband told me, he said, Cassandra, these 2 gentlemen possess some of these symptoms. I told him, do not worry. We're going to try to take as many precautions as we can with the limited things that he had back there available to him. I told him to keep his face and nose covered with his T-shirt. When he called me on the phone, use another T-shirt to cover the phone because this is an airborne virus. He tried his best with the limited resources that he had. These gentlemen became sicker and sicker. I called trying to get my husband moved, but I also know that if I called to get him moved, that might get the gentleman help because I had to tell them why he wanted to be moved. I called to no avail. Finally, March 28th, sheriff did answer the phone. She informed me that due to the pandemic, they were short-staffed. There were no social workers that I can speak with, and I made sure I asked, are they not there or they're just not available? She said, ma'am, they're not here. She said I could leave my name and number, and she would try to have someone to contact me within 24 hours. I did that. From March 29th, the next day, to April 6th, no one, never in Division 8, answered the telephone again. I continually called. My husband didn't show his first symptom until March 29th. He said he had a sore throat. I told him, do not worry. It's just probably a common cold. Just continue to take those precautions as far as trying to self-quarantine, but there's really nowhere that he could have went in a dormitory unit with 50 other gentlemen. And it's just a small living space. So I was just trying to encourage him to do the best that he could until I can get help. So I called. I called Division 8. I called Tom Dart's office. I called CERMAC, which is the hospital on the jail compound. There at CERMAC, no one answers the phone. You have to just leave a message and pray that someone can call you back. And someone did call back from there, but she informed me because I wasn't an inmate or an employee. She really couldn't talk to me. It's nothing that she could do to help me. I said, ma'am, can you please listen to me? My husband is in Division 8. He isn't feeling very well. He has a sore throat, but he's there with 2 other gentlemen that possess the sign of the coronavirus. She informed me that every division at the Cook County Jail have a nurse. If a nurse feels as though an inmate is sick, they will send them to CERMAC. I said, ma'am, according to what my husband is telling me, I don't even know if a nurse has been on his tier. She said, once again, if a nurse feels as though an inmate is ill, they would send them to CERMAC. So I received no help from there. From March 29th, my husband's health declined drastically. And this was a very short period of time. I'm talking about daily. It went from a sore throat to a fever, from a fever to chills, from chills to loss of sense of smell and taste, to 100% just total weakness. I began to panic. So I'm calling erratically now, daily, around the clock. I even went to try to receive help there at the jail. All the gates were locked. The guards, you only could see guards coming in and out. They had no help for me. They couldn't help me at all. So to make a long story short, my husband was finally taken to John Stroger on April 6th. When my husband arrived, he was placed in ICU because he was already in a severe stage of COVID. And he passed away April 12th at 4:20 a.m.
And then since then, that's kind of been one of the things that you've been kind of one of the catalysts for the work that you've been doing, which has been kind of protesting and drawing attention to all of the injustice essentially that's been happening. Am I correct?
Yes, sir. I've been protesting, just trying to doing as many interviews as I can, just trying to bring awareness to what happened to my husband, because his death could have been prevented if one person at the Cook County Jail, with all the numbers that they have for the families to call. I called the inmate hotline. I called Division 8 where he was housed. I called Tom Dart's office. I called CERMAC. If one person would have just taken my call and did their job. My husband was 42 years old. He walked in Cook County Jail a healthy man. He left out in a body bag. He's not supposed to be dead. If one person would have just taken my calls and helped me, his death could have been prevented.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that I read in one of the articles when we were preparing for this was, and I think you said it yesterday too, you made 132 phone calls.
132. And let me tell you, the only reason why I know the exact number is the day that my husband died, which was Easter Sunday. I was sitting on the couch. I went through an array of emotions. I went from shock to just sheer pain, unbelievable pain, to confusion. And as his wife, I was sitting there and I just wanted to know, did I do everything that I could to try to help him? And that's when I said, Cassandra, let me just go to the call logs and just start looking. And then when I was counting, and it went from 60 to 70 to 90 to 100, I became irate because I'm saying this is not right. And by nature, I'm just a teacher. I'm not an activist, but I knew that day, Cassandra, cry these tears, but you have to get out here and do something. This is not right. And when I counted 132 phone calls to no avail, no, I can't let this happen to another family. I can't.
You know, I think Cassandra brings up this important point, right? Which was like she was constantly trying to get a hold, right? Like that there was kind of like this like wall of like secrecy and like of communication of being able to provide like insight of like what was actually happening. And you know, and at the same time we see kind of reports that are heroizing Tom Dart, right? And saying that he's handling the situation great. And I think about that, Mark, because right, like I think as someone that was wrongly incarcerated for 28 years, for a crime you didn't commit. You're a John Birch torture survivor. That was when you were 16 years old in 1981, the year that I was born, right, was beaten into confession. One of the first officers was John McCann. I remember reading an article in prep for this that said that. And I think, you know, we even forget about memory, right? Because one of the things that's really important is so many of those cases were prosecuted by then state's attorney, but would become the mayor, Richard M. Daley. Right. Who also, you know, I know him through my close friend, David Lozano, who's one of my best friends growing up and whose father was the assassinated activist, Rudy Lozano, that Daley tried to paint as a gangbanger after his assassination. And so I'm saying that because, you know, there's, you know, men like this, right, have been being able to operate and being able to give an official narrative of what's really happening, right? Whether it's Tom Dart or Daley or Lori Lightfoot. And from a lot of the reports, it's that they're doing everything that they can, and they've actually been doing things pretty well regarding kind of how they're dealing with Cook County Jail and Statesville and these other kind of prisons in the state. But you know prison in a very intimate way. Can you talk to us about what you really thought when COVID-19 was popping off and what you believe was really happening in there?
Yes. And first of all, thank each and every viewer that is viewing this telecast. You know, being a Chicago police torture survivor and hearing of COVID-19, it reminds you of being stuck in a time frame, meaning not able to get out of a situation that you find yourself in. Prisons have no social distancing. And for elected officials to sell the narrative that they could structure social distancing behind jail and prison walls is a myth that they were able to sell to the residents of Cook County and of the state of Illinois. We as a people, from the days of John Burge up until now, we act like we fail to acknowledge the fact that John Burge tortured over 200 African American and Latino people, with still over 100 individuals that are still warehoused inside of our prisons. You know, as Cassandra best describes, you know, what is a solution when you have contacted a jail over 132 times to complain that, guess what? My husband has called me and informed me that he is in the midst of some individuals that may have COVID-19, and to inform them of other things. But however, our criminal justice system, it has no way for a resident like Cassandra to at least talk to a live human being. We all should have a problem with this. And that problem must lie upon the Cook County Sheriff, Tom Dart, as well as Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle. And we cannot allow our Illinois governor, I don't care how Miss so-called rookie or misinformed he is, for him or his lieutenant governor to not get up and to at least go down to the Cook County Jail or to Statesville Prison and to visit to make sure that everything was being set up in accordance to the state guidelines is mismanagement. And I think that our people don't fully understand that. But in closing, you know, what Cassandra went through is a form of torture, and it carries trauma. And unfortunately, in our communities, we really don't have centers other than one, and that is the Chicago Torture Justice Center, that is in any position to treat people like her. And I just feel that we as residents that have been victimized, look at all of the people that are hemmed up in our jailhouses and our prisons right now. And what our government wants to sell us is that everything is okay. Well, let me tell you, until they come out with a vaccine, everything is not okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that you're bringing up, like Mark, that I think is interesting, right? Even when we talk about the John Birch torture survivors, one, we know that it didn't just stop there, right? That's why The Guardian was able to break the story in 2014 about Holman Square, where thousands of, predominantly Black people, I think it was 92%, of the people that were held in Holman Square and tortured into confessions were Black, right? And so, or forced to work as informants, if I remember correctly, right? But I'm thinking about that because even thinking about the John Birch tortures, I think it's the Illinois Torture and Relief Commission that said that there are over 500 cases that are still backlogged and have not been treated. And one of the things why I'm even thinking about that is because, I think the statistic is it would take over a quarter of a century to actually, at the rate that they're processing them, to process these over 500 cases. But it means that they were never, if it was about their innocence, then they were never incarcerated. Right, because they were guilty or criminal. They were incarcerated because they were Black, because they were poor, right? And I think that, go ahead.
Yes, let me make a comment to that.
Yeah, please.
Innocence don't matter in this country. The only thing that seems to matter is punitive justice. That's what we have been taught. We have been taught that we have to be harsh towards people who allegedly break laws. And what we do is we lock them inside of a jail or a prison and we profit off of them. But now when it's time for them to be released, we don't have a clue how to help them. So we release them back out into the conditions of homelessness, of bipolar conditions and all sorts of stuff, and say, good luck, have a nice day. And sad as people may not want to hear, all of us is responsible for these inhumane, barbaric laws that exist now today. And we cannot sit up here and ignore the fact that Bill Clinton, as well as his wife, Hillary Clinton, who called us super predators, who had Biden, the one who is running for president today, who set up and likewise called us super predators on the House floor. See, people don't understand. We sit back and we cry and we scream. And when we get these people into public office, we find out these people are against us. We need blood that looks like you. We need blood that looks like you. We need blood that represents our integrity. We're representing their integrity. They should be shining our shoes, but we're shining their shoes.
So I think,
go ahead, Charles.
I think I want to tag in Matt here because you're speaking to narrative essentially, and how it's always to treat people as harshly as possible. It's always about punitive justice, and we known the bond fund here in Chicago to take up this fight of like releasing folks from like Cook County Jail. Yet the narrative is that once these folks are released, they go back to committing crime. Therefore, they deserve to be in prison and locked up, whatever. So I would like for Matt to speak on like the common misconceptions around who is housed in Cook County Jail.
Sure. I mean, so I guess to start with I think we got to think about like the scale of the actual problem we've got at Cook County Jail. So, you know, the paper might say that like on any given day, there's like 5,500 people in the jail, but that doesn't really tell the story of like the harm that's being caused by the jail. It's really minimizing it when you think about how each one of those individuals is ripped from a community, and you've got dozens of people who are impacted by that one person's incarceration. And then we're talking about a jail. So everybody who's there is there. 90% of them are there pre-trial, meaning they haven't been convicted of a crime. They're simply awaiting trial. And so you've got people going in and out of the jail every day, which means over the course of a year, we're talking about 60,000 people actually get locked up at Cook County Jail every year, which means this jail is actually harming like hundreds of thousands of people in our community every year. You step back further, you've got 250,000 people get locked up in the state of Illinois every year pre-trial. And a majority of those people are there only because they can't afford to pay a money bond. To draw back to what Mark was talking about our culture only understanding these punitive systems, like money bond in theory, according to the court's own theories, you've got the court saying that bond isn't supposed to be the difference between incarceration and freedom. It's supposed to be a condition of a person's release. So when the judge sets a bond, that bond is the judge basically saying that person is safe to go back into the community, and the only thing that's keeping them inside is their lack of access to wealth. And so, you know, over the last like 30 or 40 years, we see judges using bond as a punitive measure, even though that's not what it's even supposed to be for, because that's the only thing that these judges, police, states attorneys understand is punishment. And so we're punishing hundreds of thousands of people in this state every year simply because they don't have the money to get out. And I mean, I don't think we can emphasize enough that bond hearing is actually like the most important decision that a judge is going to make in a case next to whether or not that person is found innocent or guilty, right? Because like even just like 3 or 4 days of pretrial incarceration could severely impact the rest of a person's life.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
So I'm thinking like, what has this moment changed for like the Chicago Community Bond Fund in terms of like the COVID-19 crisis? I'm sure like it has prevented, like not prevented, but produced like certain obstacles or things we haven't considered before in terms of like bond and the bond system in general. So can you detail like to the audience what obstacles are we now facing, or like the Chicago Community Bond Fund specifically facing in light of the COVID-19 crisis?
Yeah, so obstacles to our work, I mean, you know, as people probably have heard, the courts are currently shut down for the most part in Cook County. The only thing that is happening really are bond hearings. And so what that means is that people's cases aren't moving along, people's cases aren't ending. So, you know, typically a felony case in Cook County could leave somebody in the jail for like 1 year to 2 years before a decision is even reached. We paid bond a few years ago for a guy who was in the jail 5 years waiting for trial. 20 years old when he was locked up in the jail. We paid his bond. He was 25. And so, you know, you've got people now who have had months without getting a hearing, which is outrageous. For our work, though, that means that like cases aren't resolving, which means we're not getting money back, which means that money can't be used to pay bond for other folks, because our whole revolving fund relies on money coming back to us so that we can use that to free other people. So that's like a really like practical way in which we've been harmed. We've also got the county clerk's office is shut down for the most part right now, which means Dorothy Brown, the Cook County clerk, is like sitting on bond money that could be going back to our organization, which is actually like a really small problem when you think about like how precarious so many families are right now. You've got families that like are owed bond checks by this county that are not getting that money back and like desperately need it in this moment. So those are some of like, I guess the practical ways that this moment affected our fund. And then I could go on obviously about like the way it's totally shifted our work. But.
Well, I mean, I think that one of the things I'm thinking about too, right, is like, I think that people don't, you know, I was looking at Chicago Bond Fund's kind of website and some of the think pieces that I think you even authored. I think you authored one in like 2017 with Lavette Mays, if I'm correct as her name. And like some of the statistics in there that are just available are nuts, right? Like I think it's that about 95% of the people that are currently held in Cook County Jail have not actually been convicted of a crime. And to me, like, you know, and then that that 62, I think it's like 62 to 65% of them. I might be mixing up statistics in my head, but I don't know, it's well over half are actually just there because, like you said, they cannot afford like they can't afford bail. And I think it's, you know, when we think about who, like if we think about other statistics, right? I think one of them is that although, you know, and we see this even with COVID deaths, right? Like Black people constitute 1/3 to 1/3 of the city. Even though we've tried to push them out, right, through mayoral policy, which is why we've lost 250,000 Black people in Chicago over a decade. But that even though they still only comprise 25 to 30% of the city, they make up 3/4, 73, roughly 75% of the population in Cook County Jail. And I'm saying that because I think that like those are these statistics that we kind of gloss over or that we read, but it then starts weaving a different narrative beyond criminality. That's one about steeped in racism around why we lock people up and who we're locking up. I just thought that everyone wanted to hear me talk for 3 minutes, and in case you want to take a sip of your Henny or your coffee or your sangria, you could go.
Northwest Side tap water.
Yeah, I know. I was like, I was like, all right, man. Good. I don't know which is gonna get us drunker, that tap water, that because you know they're letting Nestle pump all the good shit and sell it back to us. So, Jackie or Charles, you got any other questions? Because I can keep going.
So I wanted to say that Cook County Jail is in my neighborhood. It's in Little Village on 26th and California. And when we first heard that there was an outbreak of COVID-19, everybody freaked out. I mean, for a couple of reasons. I mean, we have our own people in there, but also the proximity of the jail to the neighborhood was, you know, people got scared. So based on your experience and people who you have talked to, whether you've been in Cook County Jail, no matter in what capacity, why do you think there was such a high rate of infection in this particular jail as opposed to other jails and prisons in other parts of the country? Is it the size or the overcrowding? Is it the security guards coming in and out? Like, what do you think are the factors that contributed to Cook County Jail having such a big outbreak?
Neglect.
Oh, yeah.
100% neglect on Tom Dark's part. The leadership didn't care, if you ask me, in my opinion, because if you knew about a virus in January, you had ample opportunity to prepare for this instead of letting people like Keenan Alexander stand there for such a petty crime when you could have released him and several others to prepare for the ones that you thought shouldn't be released, even though I think that everyone deserves a chance because no one in Cook County Jail is convicted of anything. But people like Keenan Alexander, you could have let him go so you can try to social distance until you work out the rest. So I think it was just 100% neglect. Just Tom Dart just shows no care, no empathy at all, not even for his own employees. The guards are dying. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, Mark?
And I think that total neglect inside of the Cook County Jail is something that has been occurring for decades and decades and decades of years. It would probably stretch as far as to the Spencer Link, who is head of the AR Link Funeral Home. Prisons and especially the Cook County Jail begin to deteriorate, and they invested little to no money at all. What I really believe today that is responsible for the large spread of COVID-19 is mischievous guards, meaning individuals that come in, and I haven't seen so many people play around with this virus than them. So when we tell you, while there are many people that are sitting back in outrage that there are some Cook County sheriffs that caught this virus, I'm not one. I've seen them with my own two eyes being mischievous, and me being the one speaking sensitive as to why are you feeling this way? They feeling this way because of, I would say, they feel more superior than the inmates. They are walking around, at least what I observed was no gloves. Some of them are wearing masks. Some of them are not wearing masks. They don't care. And as much as you complain about what is sensible, they try to turn it and to make it appear as if it is insensitive. And one of the individuals that left the jail on the 9th they had a confrontation with one of the guards because that's what he was doing. He was playing and saying that, well, hey, listen here, be careful. I'm gonna give you the COVID-19, and I think that I haven't saw so much neglect and irresponsible behavior in any line of government like I have seen over at the Cook County Jail and within our Cook County criminal justice system that is in play, stretching from the days of Richard Delly. And especially today, because there's a lot of black faces, there's a lot of Hispanic faces, and people think that the system has changed when reality is this little buck teeth, snag a tooth individual, they should have never even let me into the game to see that they use drugs too,
Right.
that they rape people too, and that they do all of these evil things and then put the robe on and go there and slam people in the community without having any way of helping those individuals. And that is literally our prison system today. What little Pookie did is a product of our laws being towed down by government saying, well, you can't discipline, you can't do this, you can't do this. Well, in the African American community, you needed some of that stuff. Now the families don't have that power. Now it falls exclusively on the little old lady, and the little old lady find out her son is 2, 3 times bigger than her, but total neglect at the Cook County Jail. They get a super F from me.
So one thing I'm thinking about is, key players and also like leadership in the time of this crisis and what they've like just narratives in the media, right? And so I'm thinking back to like Lori Lightfoot and how she said that her plan is like to eliminate poverty in Chicago, right? And so I'm thinking about that piece, but also how we have a bunch of poor Black and brown people locked up in the Cook County Jail and also like exiting the jail. We all know like jail continues the cycle of poverty and also impoverishes people coming out of it. But in light of this like crisis, like who are the key players that are responsible or like have a considerable amount of power in this moment that people can yell and scream at or really hold their feet to the fire in terms of like freeing them all. I believe Pritzker was named and Lori Lightfoot. Is there anyone else? Anybody we should consider?
And tagging on to Charles' question, because I think one of the things that I even heard, two of the names I heard was like Dorothy Brown and Tony Preckwinkle.
Right.
And it's so funny because they have like Cook County Clerk, right? Or, the board president. And we really like those are such abstract titles. It doesn't necessarily say what they do, right? And it's a way in which like we alienate people from understanding government, from understanding politics, and so how are those people involved? If you could break down some of that. So like Charles said, like key players. And like, what is it that these motherfuckers are doing that they can't even do, right? And I don't want to say they're not doing their jobs right. I think they're doing their jobs in a country that is based on white supremacy, on the degradation of Black people, on genocide in multiple ways. Like they're doing their jobs perfectly well. So I want to know, what to commend them on.
I mean, if I was going to name three stooges, I would say you've got Sheriff Tom Dart, first and foremost, who, like Cassandra rightly keeps reiterating, that we knew about this virus in January. He had more than enough time to prepare. We were already seeing prison riots in Italy and I think it was like late February, early March. So people were already talking about how coronavirus was going to impact jails and prisons. And obviously the U.S. being the top incarcerator on earth, this should have been a top concern for not just Sheriff Tom Dart, but wardens across the country. And he's done nothing to, wasn't doing anything to improve the conditions in the jail. It literally took a federal lawsuit to increase the distribution of soap, to get people inside masks, and to even begin to try to socially distance people. The second person I would say is State's Attorney Kim Foxx, who, is touted as this great progressive. If that's true, she has failed everybody in this county in this moment. When they had bond reviews to see, who was going to get out of the jail in this moment. And like Cassandra was saying, even if everybody wasn't going to get out, they could have reduced the number of people significantly. Her office opposed 80% of the request for release made by the public defender's office.
Why do you think, man, when you say like that statistic, I got two very important questions. The first is, why do you think someone like, given the fact that she's kind of been upheld by and protected by progressives, even when there's been critiques like Jussie, people have kind of around Jussie Smollett, people have stood up for her, right? Because we think that this is like one of our own that's in there. Part of how she got elected was, because of the work of the people that were behind by Anita, that then went on to do No Cop Academy, who, provided some inroads for someone besides of Anita Alvarez to be able to take that position. Why would she say no to 80? Okay, let's be fair, you want to do half, right? But like 80% is like a hard number. My other very serious question is, do you think we should just change his name to Tom Fart?
I'm into it.
100%, yes.
But let's go.
I mean, as for Fox, I mean, I think it's super complicated, right? Because when the Jussie Smollett thing happened, you had the MAGA folks out there, you had the FOP, just like out and out, like white supremacist groups. And so I think there's obviously forces that are on the very far, like I would even go as far as saying fascist right, that are literally like demanding more incarceration in Cook County. So she's like dealing with that. Now, why in this moment though, like she didn't do the right thing, where I feel like the door was open. It was very easy. There was this whole national conversation around this. It's really beyond me. And the rhetoric that she has given in the media, if you didn't look at those numbers, it'd be very easy to hear the way she's being talked about and think that she was one of the prime movers and shakers in this moment. And then again, you look at who is populating her office. So even if she's making changes at the top, many of Alvarez's line attorneys are still out there. And if they don't clean house, I don't see how, like, even she could be, as progressive as she wants to be, it's not going to change the behavioral patterns. And then I think the biggest failure was that when the public defender's office was pushed by community groups across the county to actually file a petition calling for mass release, backing the demands being made by community groups, Fox's office openly just shut it all down and said, no, absolutely not. Like, we can't, there's no bucket of people that we can say all of them get out. Like, even really like the bare minimum of stuff. So I don't know. I think we all have a lot of work to do in holding her accountable, because I think the unfortunate reality is that right now, anybody that's challenging her is going to be from a much, much further right standpoint. And until we have somebody that's actually committed to tearing down the office as it stands today, to me, at least, it seems like it's about accountability.
Kim Fox kick rocks. That's from Ricardo Gamboa. Get that. I'm on my mom jokes today. Charles Jackie, you got anything? You want to follow that up with? Because I'll go.
You know what I want to say, Charles, before you say this? I want to say that, yes, Matt, you're on target, but I think we're missing out. I would put 2 and 3 together against Fox. No, Fox has done a horrible job. Okay, and not only have Fox done a horrible job, but the wall is dark. The second one of that wall has to be Fox, and the third one you got to look at the governor. Matter of fact, that's the one who's funding them the cookies to make them feel like, well, hey, listen here, we can come out and do what we want to towards these little poor people. The bottom line of it is Kim Fox ran as an individual that was from Cabrini Green and that she understood the issues. Well, let me tell you, if Kim Fox was right here on this live, she will tell you, in a whole full room of people who supported her, I booed her and I told her that I did not feel that she would change the system. And the reason being, I don't know how many of you are familiar with juveniles that are sentenced to natural life inside of our prison system, but there was a case back in 2012, Miller versus Alabama, and she stated that she would examine these cases one by one. She stated the same thing relevant to the torture cases one by one. Let me tell you, these guys will be dead examining these cases one by one. We have some Burge torture survivors who have been in prison over 45 years, and people don't seem to understand the urgency of that. But definitely, the governor must take responsibility. He is the chief and commanding officer of this entire state. He did a lousy job in protecting individuals at Statesville Prison, and he has done a wonderful job at protecting the interests of Tom Dart.
Can you talk a little bit more about that, Mark, or or anyone else, to Matt or Cassandra, if you want to chime in? Because I do think one of the things that we've seen, right, and it speaks to this whole moment where we have people from Lightfoot, to Fox apparently, Chuy Garcia, people that have been really fronting as progressive in this moment of like a post-Bernie Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez type of United States. And then that go ahead and betray progressive interest, right? And so even when we talk about J.B. Pritzker, we had our last show was on Rent, which is another 3-part series that we're looking at around housing during Corona. And Antonio Gutierrez from the Autonomous Tenants Union pointed out how the governor could theoretically and quite possibly actually just do some rent excusal that he does not, right? And one of the things he pointed out was that, well, he also is a landlord, right? That he owns properties, right? And so I think that's so important because I don't think people are making any of those connections, including me. I was like, yeah, JB, tell Trump he's a bitch, right? Without recognizing how he's implicated in these other ways, and I just wanted to tickle him out of, some respect for mouthing off to Trump. But now I'm like, you a punk. The P in Pritzker stands for punk. So talk to me a little bit about, a little bit more about when you say he's protecting Tom Dart's interest. And of course, Cassandra, man, there's me always trying to make someone's name in Spanish. I'm the Cassandra and Mateo. If you'd like to chime on in, let me know.
Well, let me tell you, this is how he's doing it. We're looking at the individual who he's done it to. Okay, we're looking at Cassandra. Okay, she's a resident. If I understand correctly, she's a school teacher. Okay, so let me tell you, anytime you make that many phone calls to a Cook County prison, and well, it is a prison. They say jail, but it's a prison. And you have a governor that sees this because he reads the Chicago Tribune every day. He reads the Sun-Times every day. And now you mean to tell me that he does no changes inside of the Cook County jail? Matter of fact, who is this? Fox 32 started getting telephone calls from women inside of the jail and revealing the information. It ain't like this governor don't know. And when we tell you, he's in hot water with me because he lied to me about the torture cases. I sat with him over at Operation Push even before he made it. And I explained to him the scenarios. He told me that he fully understood. And when he got into office, he played the nut role, including Kim Fox with torture survivors, leaving them in prison. And she's challenging their COVID-19 petitions with teeth and nail. No, let me tell you, they all should have a problem with all residents of the state of Illinois if you have someone locked up.
Yeah, I think Pritzker's obviously not done nearly enough for folks in IDOC, like Mark was saying. The situation in Statesville and the prisons across the state is atrocious. But I think looking here at Cook County, the other big stakeholder that's really let people down is Chief Judge Timothy Evans, who I think when it's come to bond reform did help make some great changes happen in the last few years. But in this moment, there has not been enough direction or pressure on his judges to actually be granting people release, creating an expedited process to allow that to happen. And then we've got this really bizarre, futuristic problem right now of Cook County before this started had about 2,400 people locked up in their homes on electronic monitors. So literally people can't leave, 2,400 people can't leave the house to go to the grocery store or the laundromat. And since this started, that number has exploded to about by 700. So there's now over 3,100 people. So when we talk about people leaving the jail, a lot of those people aren't free. They're locked up in their homes because he's got judges handing out electronic monitors like candy. And they did it so much so that they've run out of the equipment now. And you've got people in Cook County Jail right now that his judges have cleared for release that are only there because the county can't turn up more electronic monitoring equipment. And I haven't heard anything about like any direction about like reviewing those people's conditions to get those people out of this life-threatening situation, or the fact that like they don't need that kind of surveillance on them when they're awaiting trial. These people have more surveillance on them on electronic monitoring pre-trial in Cook County than people leaving IDOC. It doesn't make sense.
And when it comes to Governor Pritzker, I would just, if I could speak with him now, I would just really want to ask him. I know, like you guys said, he read the newspapers. I'm quite sure he have heard different stories. If everyone, including inmates that's still inside of Cook County Jail, if I'm saying something, the inmates are basically saying the same things that I'm saying, deplorable conditions, all of the above. Just investigate what Tom Dart is doing. Investigate and see for yourself. Just don't take his word. My feelings were so hurt when I heard about the Chicago Tribune and the wonderful things that they said, Tom Dart said about himself. And I'm looking like 10 people have lost their life. How can you say you did a wonderful job during this pandemic? You did a horrible job, sir. And not only did you do a horrible job, you are so disrespectful when it comes to people like myself who lost a loved one. You did never get in the newspapers or on the news with Chuck Gowdy and say, well, you know, I'm trying to look over this situation. What did you do? You tried to put my husband's background out there. Forget him dying. Nicholas Lee was a convicted felon. Sir, he died. He contracted a virus in your jail and he died. And I want to thank Mr. Clements for saying something. I am a torture victim. People would never understand what I go through daily. I had to witness and I ask everybody to do this for me. Whenever I talk about my husband, just think about your significant other or a family member, a loved one that's back there. And you are their only hope. You are their only help. And they're calling you. People don't understand. I will replay those conversations every day for the rest of my life. People will not understand. It's torture because I walk every day through this with my husband and his health was declining more and more. And I did everything that I could do. I did everything I could that God knows. I Googled numbers, and to this day, Tom Dart still doesn't have a voicemail. His voicemail system is still not set up on his at the Tom Dart at his office. They're still not answering the phones in Division 8, and I'm looking like, oh my God! And I know that they've heard my story, so that just showed me inmate lives do not matter. But guess what? Nicholas Lee was my best friend. He was my husband. So thank you for knowing that I am a torture victim. I am, because that was torture. Nicholas has gone on to another life. He has gone on. This life is over. But guess what? I'm still here to remember those conversations, to hear his voice get weaker and weaker. So for Governor Pritzker, I would just like for him to hear me. And if it ain't not only me, the inmates that Matt talked to daily, that they have these recorded conversations. Everyone can't be lying, saying the same thing.
Right.
Tom Dart has to go. He has to go.
I mean, you bring up a good point, and that is that Tom Dart is evil motherfucker. And so one of the things that we are doing right now here at the Hoodoisie, if you can look in the description of when you clicked on this video, Yasmin, our editorial producer, will put in the comments. It says hashtag Tom Dart got blood on his hands. And it also says, more importantly, hashtag justice for Nicholas Lee. Please take a moment right now.
Thank you.
I will wait, motherfuckers, but you better take that moment to post it. You can open up another tab while you're watching this and post it on your Twitter, post it on your Facebook. You know, this again, like I think Cassandra proves, these aren't just you know, invisible numbers and statistics. They're actually real people. And like Matt said, there are people that are ripped from a community. And, you know, I don't care if someone is a convicted felon. I don't care, you know, I don't care what, you know, that no one deserves to die. No one deserves to be in prison. One, you know, and I think it speaks to what Mark said and what Matt also said, is that we're more interested in punishing people than we are, you know, than we are actually doing what prisons are supposed to do, rehabilitation, right? But I think, you know, it brings up this other topic, right? In that, one, Tom Dart was able to say as a implicit reasoning for people to eat up and consume, well, this guy committed a crime, he was guilty, right?
Yeah.
But also, who gave him the platform to say that? And we're talking about newspapers like the Chicago Tribune. I think, Matt, those are your best friends, right? And we're joking for those that are watching. Less than a month ago, the Tribune actually released a hit piece on the Chicago Bond Fund. Saying that they were kind of advocating to release kind of dangerous criminals again over into the by advocating for people to decarcerate Cook County Jail, even though, right, some of the statistics that Matt can probably say better than me, over half the people there have not been convicted of a crime. But we do know that no matter what they've been convicted for, why they're in there, right, that for jail has horrible reverberations in the community. But more importantly, none of them have been convicted of a death sentence through COVID-19 like Nicholas Lee. But again, like getting back to this, man, I've been like, that went 7 different ways. I'm going to bring it back, y'all. Just wait, don't worry. But, it goes back to media narratives, right? And so how have you all been seeing, and Mark, you have a historical memory around this, right? Because of the way they even narrated crime in the 80s and 90s. We're talking about, the Clintons and Biden. How have you been seeing local media represent this crisis? And where are the spots that people can go check out for kind of more reliable media on prison that are giving us a narrative that is other than that these people deserve to die?
Well, I think that a great narrative would be to follow Injustice Watch and its articles, to follow In These Times and its articles, The Nation and its articles, and there's some few others, but definitely mainstream media have not shown us the respect that we deserve as a people. And I recall a couple of weeks ago starting some type of media campaign to try to find out how many deaths inside of Statesville. We still ain't found that out. So,
I mean, I just want to jump in. I don't like Injustice Watch. I mean, and by I don't like Injustice Watch, I just don't like people there. And by people there, I mean Charles. I'm just messing around. I love Injustice Watch.
I got a haters club. Join the club. You can be CEO.
I love Charles and I love Injustice Watch. How about Matt and Cassandra? What are you all thinking?
My top is, Matt, Chicago Bond Association. I promise you, and I'm not just saying it because you are here, they have helped me so very much. And I mean, they post everything, and what they post is real. So that's my go-to for everything.
Yeah, and Chicago. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm saying because everybody else has really did me wrong. Just Chicago Tribune, everybody, they just have my husband like he's just a very big monster, but he wasn't.
And that's a thing. That's a technique that we see, right? I mean, Mike Brown, Tamir. I mean, down to Tamir Rice, right? Who was shot for being in a park, right? Like every time a Black person dies unjustly, right? Like the move is to smear the person and to kind of put them cast their humanity in a way that dehumanizes them and puts doubt on their right to live. Matt, how about you? Where are some spots that you think people could check out and should be looking out for?
So thank you, Cassandra, for shouting out our blog. So yeah, if you go to chicagobond.org, we've got we're constantly updating about what's happening in the jail and just across Illinois as well with jails. But then for outside outlets, I'll give 2 people shout outs. Pascal Sabino over at Block Club Chicago has been doing incredible reporting on the situation at the jail. And then Shannon Heffernan over at WBEZ is also consistently been shining a light on things that the rest of the local media seems to just be pretty content on pushing under the rug. I
also want to give a shout out to Southside Weekly and to I also think truthout.org is the organization that's doing some great work around news and getting alternative perspectives out there as well.
And follow that free them all hashtag on Twitter and social media. That's one of the easiest ways you can tap into different organizations, activists, and people for alternative narratives to this bullshit ass mainstream.
And one thing I wanted to give a shout out is to my colleagues over at the Chicago Torture Justice Center. And, I know that we're doing what little we can do. And, the bottom line of it is we thank each and every one of you for making a way for us.
Mm-hmm. I think, even thinking about this more, right? Because I kind of want to pivot right here and think about one of the things that we've seen, right, in all this is we talked a lot about, rightfully the way shit is fucked up, right? But I think one of the other things that I want to throw out there, is there anywhere that you know of, right, that is doing things right, or that is proposing an alternative model of how you can more carefully, respond to the incarcerated people and prison in this moment that you all know of? I know, Matt, you mentioned about the riots that were happening in Italy. And so I just wanted to kind of see if we there, and if not, like what could happen tomorrow if we were to just put the right pressure on the right people.
I mean, I'm an anarchist, so I'm not a very big fan of states. So,
Yes.
but like, in terms of like other countries that have done this right, like Iran actually acted really quickly to release people, not just from jail, but from prison, and didn't just like release them temporarily. They actually like commuted people's sentences. And so large numbers of people that will not be pulled back into their prison system when this is over. If Iran can do it, I don't see why we can't do that here. But I think the bigger thing is that like, I think our communities have the answers, and Chicago has been, I think, the hotbed for abolitionist organizing for a long time. Shout out to Mariam Kaba for really, making that conversation what it is here. And I think, it's moments like these that it becomes obvious that these things that our communities have been talking about for a long time are not crazy. They're not out there ideas. They actually have a practical application, and they're wholly necessary, and the people's lives are depending on them. These institutions on like a daily basis are killing people. And right now that's just put that on steroids. So, I think we just got to look to the groups doing organizing in the city.
Mark or Cassandra, got anything y'all want to add?
Well, let me tell you, I think that what is taking place, man, it is the few that is rallying around this particular issue. I think they're burnt out, even though there is some more events that is scheduled. I think that, man, some way, somehow, it has to be pressure put on the governor. There's a young man by the name of Stanley Howard still in prison. Stanley's been locked up for 35 years as a torture survivor. Here it is, you have Gerald Reed, who has been locked up for 30 years of his life, who is a torture survivor. And both of these individuals are ill. And I just don't understand what is the narrative of the government to leave those individuals inside of a prison, despite the fact that evidence strongly supports the fact that they were taken down to police stations and that they were tortured, and that the likelihood of them being guilty of the crime is next to none. But the criminal justice system, it still keeps people locked up. And around Cassandra's situation, people need to get up. It's no other way to describe this. It's the same thing as to what's taking place with George Floyd out of the state of Minnesota. That same thing should be occurring here. But
thank you.
Cover up so much right up under our noses, and then we act like it does not have any effect upon us, when in reality it's our uncle, it's our brother, it's our father, it's our cousin, it's our community. And we must understand what love is. I hate to say this, we are in a world that don't know anything about love and respect of its brothers.
And I thank you for saying that, because my feelings was so hurt. I'm devastated about what happened to George as well. And I put the hashtag on my Facebook page, and I'm standing in solidarity with his family. But I saw so many activists from Chicago go there, and I'm looking like they murdered my husband here. Help me, please. They murdered him. He didn't die. He walked in a healthy man. He left out in a body bag. So thank you for saying that, because daily it's myself, Miss Ruff, maybe two other people. I even took my grandbaby out there because I'm trying to teach him that you're gonna one day be a adult Black man. So please, I want him to see what happened to his grandfather. But yes, thank you for saying that. A lot of activists left and went to Minneapolis, and I'm like, please help me. I need it.
And Cassandra, feel free to, after this show, we've been keeping up with all of our guests during this time and supporting their campaigns and promoting their work. And we have Alejandro Reyes, who is really critical. He's one of our videographers of getting out the story around the Little Village bombing of Hilco, the plant that bombed. That was the corporation that bombed their own plant
Right.
and spread particular matter during a respiratory pandemic. But we can definitely document and get some of that to try and help amplify. And I'm making that, saying that here. I think one of the things that I'm thinking about right now, and and like I'm anti-statist too, right? And I think one of the things that I'm also thinking about is we've talked so much about the work that we're doing on the outside, right? Like, and the pressure and how we can pressure people that are in these positions. But even the fact that, Cassandra, that Nicholas was calling you means that prisoners are always advocating for themselves and fighting for their own survival and working to fight for their own survival. I'm thinking about Mark, like, I know your story. I know it's so weird seeing you because I feel like I know you. I've read so much about you, but even the fact that you started reading in the prison library, started participating in a letter writing campaign to help, minimize the sentence of a young girl that was accused, that was convicted of murdering. Paula Cooper, that was convicted of murdering, a priest from a death sentence. And so I'm thinking just, what are some of the actions? And I know, Matt, I'm saying this because I also know the Chicago Bond Fund. I think you said you have a dozen volunteers that are collecting testimonies. What are some of the actions that you're aware of that people are doing inside to fight for their lives in a state that doesn't care if they die?
Let me tell you, and this would hurt so bad. I can relive all the calls I had with my husband. My husband went to the point to where, so he found a cell down on the second floor on the first floor for him to isolate himself in. If one person would have answered the phone for me, I was going to tell him about the cell that was on, I believe, 1D or something. I have it written down in my book because he had me taking notes daily. So he was trying to live. He was trying. My husband wasn't sick at all. He was trying. He was helping me. He was giving me names of sergeants, even in different divisions, that was nice to him, that he thought could help me. I was calling to no avail. So he was advocating for himself. He was trying to stay alive. And like you said, Mr. Clemens, I'm a torture victim now because I'm going to remember everything for the rest of my life. Every phone call, everything that he tried to do to help me get him help, I'm going to remember. And I hate to say it, we failed. That's why I'm trying so hard so another family will never go through this.
And I think like I got two more questions that I want to go close out on. And I think like, Cassandra, one of the things that we were talking about even yesterday, and you were like, it ain't even about if they give me money. Like if I win some settlement out of this, like it's not even about that anymore. And so
I have had several lawyers to contact me. I haven't yet to sit down with anyone because that's the last thing on my mind. I do know that eventually I will have to, but I lost my best friend and I need to fight for him. Somebody has to be held accountable for this 42-year-old healthy man, even though Tom Dart tried to put it out here that he died from cardiac arrest. My husband's death certificate and his autopsy report says that he died from coronavirus-COVID-19. That's it. That's it. So, what is a widower with money? I'm still going to be by myself.
So what does accountability look like here for you?
Tom Dart resigning or getting fired, them doing something to help those young men. And not only that, just remembering that they're human. Let them go. Like, even if you can't let all of them go at one time, help them social distance. Let people that, like Matt in the Chicago Community Bond Fund, if they are trying to help, they're not saying, okay, just let them all just run out. They're trying to pay for them. If they don't have the money, do I die because I'm poor? Do I die? My husband didn't have a bond. So guess what? But the others that did, maybe if they would have let them go, maybe they could have social distanced, and I would never had to be tortured and continue to call. So justice for me is just changing the whole entire system because it's corrupt. It's corrupt from inside out.
Yeah, and I think it's important to even know, I think we hear people are everyday people, and many people that tune into the show are inundated just by headlines of crime, and the face of crime is always, mostly a black face, right? And or
Right.
or a brown face, but that idea, right? Like it's funny when we say the statistic of 70% of Cook County, over 70% of Cook County jail is black people, because the reality is before the gains of the civil rights, the majority of prisoners were white. And it's precisely after desegregation that we see a total reverse that went from 30% of black prisoners but the majority of white prisoners to reverse in those statistics, precisely when, they were breaking up black radical movements and other movements like the Young Lords, and using prisons to warehouse the potential of these bodies, and in these communities that they were then intentionally trying to sabotage.
Right.
And I'm so sorry. I was, it was after we got off the phone yesterday, after we got off our call yesterday, editorial meeting, I was talking to my partner. I was like, I wanted to like scream and break something when Cassandra was telling her story. And I didn't, because I was like, if this woman could keep her shit together and it happened to her, like, who the fuck am I? And like, there's no words anyone can say. And I just want to like, thank you personally for coming on and sharing your story. And Mark, you as well. I think a question I do have is how can people, what is the shit people really can do, and how can they plug into the work that you all are doing in a real way?
Stand with me. Please, I don't care if you come out to 26 in California for 15 minutes. Just stand with me. Just know that they're human. And let me tell you, my motivation is to, when I come out, the young men beat on the windows, because I'm always like, usually in front of Division 10, they beat on the windows and they put the heart symbols out there for me. And I'm doing it for them now. And I lost the battle for my husband, but they give me strength to keep fighting.
Are you there every day?
You know what? Unless I have like another engagement, but I'm there every single day, if the weather permits.
You're like, until some crazy Mexican calls me to come on their show.
No, it's a blessing, because you're helping me bring awareness to what happened to my husband, the negligence. And I want the world to know. I don't want to be quiet. I want them to know what happened to him. Nicholas Lee was murdered. I didn't want him to be remembered as detainee number 3 from Cook County. No, his name is Nicholas Lee, and he had a family, and I loved him and I miss him dearly. And I'm going to fight for him.
Well, one thing that I want to say very strongly, Cassandra, I don't know if you have my information, but I think I gave it to you last night in the chat box. What I will do, I think I have your email, and I'll email you the info. And I seriously encourage you to give it a call. And therefore, if you want any type of services, as far as psychological services and stuff of that nature to help you cope with your pain, that is one way we can help you. And then another way is every second Saturday we do a RISE meeting. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk to my boss and see if we can get this arranged for either in June or July, relevant to your situation. And want me to tell you, I'll be happy to somewhat work with you in trying to mobilize to get other people out.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I need it. Thank you so much.
Okay, sister.
And Matt?
I mean, I think first and foremost, we got to be helping raise up voices like Cassandra's. Anytime people that have been directly impacted are speaking out, we need to make sure those voices are being heard. There's also recordings coming out from people inside. You were talking a minute ago, Ricardo, about what's happening inside. We know that people inside have been going on hunger strike and taking other actions to demand justice. Assata's Daughters released a really powerful recording of somebody in Cook County Jail a few weeks ago who was on hunger strike. The Bond Fund got a audio recording that's on our page. It's a joint letter that a bunch of guys in one of the divisions wrote, making demands of what they want to see happen. And so, we need to do everything that we can to raise up those voices while we're right here on the outside, whether that's hitting the retweet or share button or emailing it or texting your mom, whatever that is. And then so, I think the other main things though right now that at least the bond fund is working on, we've been trying to target State's Attorney Fox for all the reasons that we were talking about earlier, but also because while the number of the people in the jail has gone down, we are still seeing people being brought into the jail every day. So since this pandemic has started, there have been some additional 700 people admitted to Cook County Jail. Half of them are there only because they can't afford bond. If that keeps up, we're going to be right back where we were a month ago. And like Mark said, until we have a vaccine, this virus isn't going away. We can't allow that to happen. And quite frankly, once this virus is gone, we can't go back to Cook County where we have 5,500 people in that jail every day. So we have a petition that you can find on our Facebook page demanding that she start dropping cases, stop opposing people's bond reviews and saying that she's okay with people being let go. We've also got on our website, if you go to chicagobond.org/call-in, you can get a script and phone numbers for the chief judge, state's attorney, and sheriff to call all of them and tell them that you support a mass release. People have been calling for months. We need to continue to blow up the phones and yeah, whenever there are actions to get out there. I know it feels like, I think when we're all like locked up in our home that we don't really actually have all that much power in this moment, but you know, through social media, through our networks, there's actually quite a bit we can do without having to even get up out of a chair.
But get your ass out the chair if you can, all right? I want to thank you all so much for coming on. I want to invite you all to, you know, to stay on as we move into our updates from Jackie and our Rona reflection from Charles. This has been such an important conversation, and I cannot, like, there'll never be enough words that I have to say thank you for taking out this time. And I mean that. Appreciate all the work that you're doing, and I know so much of Chicago is lucky that you're in this city. Jax, if you could take it away with our updates right now, and I'll use out there how Chicago is at. Use all use out there. Can you all throw our guests some emojis, some likes, and some comments in the thread? And don't forget hashtag Justice for Nicholas Lee. I almost said Justice for Nicolas Cage, but no, the real thing should have been Nicholas Lee should have been in no motherfucking cage. Justice for Nicholas Lee. Tom Dodd has blood on his hands. Free them all. Bail is not a death sentence. Any of those hashtags that are available in our description window, feel free to use. Thank you all so much for being here. Jackie, take it away with our updates.
Hey everyone, so I have a few updates related to some of the themes that we've covered on the show and other shows. One of them is Minneapolis, right? There have been protests all of yesterday, today, and there will be more tonight. Justifiably so, because people are pissed off that once again, racist and power-hungry cops have murdered another Black man. George Floyd is his name. Even though he was cooperative, even though he already been restrained, even though he was a human being, right? This was a blatant disregard for his life, racism, plain and simple. And now Floyd's family, as well as the mayor of Minneapolis, are calling for all 4 cops to be charged with murder. The people, the organizers, meanwhile, are taken to the streets, probably for many days to come. We will see. But as Chicagoans who have witnessed a police cover-up of Laquan McDonald, and now that we know torture victims and survivors like Cassandra and Mark, we're all too familiar with this type of injustice. And we need to stand in solidarity with Black communities in Minneapolis, in Chicago, and all oppressed communities everywhere. It is also Mayor Lori Lightfoot's first year as mayor, as the first Black woman to hold that position, and as a gay woman as well. People have been having high hopes and high expectations for her administration, going as far as to compare her to Mayor Harold Washington, right, who was a classic unifier. But during this time, we have seen her prosecutor side come out. We saw teachers go on strike for over a week. We saw the firing of police superintendent Eddie Johnson. We saw the botched demolition of a smokestack under her watch. The continuation of developments like the Obama Center, a cop academy, 78, which is supposed to be a completely new neighborhood built from scratch, right? And an arguably decent but very controlling response to COVID-19. So is she still better than Rahm Emanuel? And is that how low the bar is for Chicago? I will leave you all with those questions to reflect on. Also, another form of incarceration that we often don't associate with the prison industrial complex, but that it very much is are the immigrant detention centers. And these are also experiencing outbreaks with very little oversight all across the country. And that's why local activists from Chicago are planning some actions to bring attention to this issue very soon. Details are being finalized, and they are also very sensitive information. So please reach out to your trusted immigration organizer to get involved. And finally, the Hoodoisie, which produced the show, and the Southside Weekly newspaper are collaborating on a new thing called Holding It Down, Stories of Community Care. We are asking our viewers and readers to submit stories of people who are holding it down for each other and are being there for each other. Whether it's a couple of friends who are organizing a raffle or a fund to help somebody out, whether it's a seamstress making face masks, or a block club that is doing food deliveries to the elderly, we want to hear it all. So we are going to compile these stories, and we are going to host a special show. And also we are going to print those stories in a newspaper. So please write to us, send us a recording, get creative, and you can reach us at holdingitdown@gmail.com. Thank you.
That's right. Go ahead and email holdingitdown@gmail.com. I'm so excited that we're releasing this initiative. I think one of the things that we see when we're talking about media is the fact that when we don't have touch with some of this history, we don't have touch or are able to control our own narratives, what the consequences of that. And so it's so exciting for me that right now, as terrible as this moment is, there are people every day that are doing shit for others. Even that Charles is a part of mutual aid efforts. I've been supporting and amplifying work. I know Jackie's doing stuff. Our friends are the ones that are showing up in front of Lori Lightfoot's crib, and all of that counts. And if we don't record it, no one else will. So please, the smallest act is a critical possibility. Email holdingitdown@gmail.com, and come celebrate us at a special show, and you'll get a copy of the newspaper that we're going to have printed. I'm really confused right now because Jackie asked a question, which was, is Lori Lightfoot the next Rom? Because I thought that Rom just put on a black woman, queer woman's skin, and then just zipped it up and became the new mayor. But not so, I'm just trying to work this out. It's funny because it's so depressingly true. But I think I want to keep things moving with our Rona reflection from Charles Alexander Preston. Go ahead, Charles. Close us out.
Yeah. So before I start, I want everybody to definitely tap that love and care button for Cassandra and Mark. Just good vibes their way. I thank them for just being here and being able to share space with them. So it's been about 10 years ago when I first heard the words "free 'em all." It was at a protest, and Chairman Fred Hampton Jr. shouted the phrase with an enviable certainty that I could never duplicate. "Free 'em all and let the people sort them out" is what he said. Tonight we heard perspectives from the formerly incarcerated, a widow of the incarcerated, and an abolitionist for the incarcerated, all attempting to inform you, our audience, about the inhumane conditions and immoral realities that people are facing today in Cook County Jail and other facilities where human beings are routinely caged and discarded. Free them all. Let us not ignore the power Governor Pritzker, Tom Dart, Lori Lightfoot, Kim Foxx, and Tony Prettwinkle wield in determining the fates of those on the inside. At any moment, they can advocate and push for freedom. They literally have lives in their control. Within that group of names lie clemency powers, pardoning powers, arresting powers, and bond dismissal. It is vital. It is vital that we continuously raise this fact and call out their roles in mass incarceration, which is just plain old incarceration to me, and imprisonment. So free them all. But let us not forget our power. In this pandemic, we have our own responsibility in continuing we have to own our responsibility in continuing this state's death-making agenda. In the age of COVID-19, where jails and prisons are hotbeds for the virus, many of us have demonstrated the normal response to encaged folks. Out of sight, out of mind. It's ridiculously common to not think about people in cages funded by our taxes, facing insurmountable amounts of stress that can only be alleviated through release. Each passing day is another 24 hours for a prisoner without a proper support system, without the freedom to rehabilitate, to amend, and to heal. In a pandemic, each passing second becomes more deadly. I used to imagine a black man aged probably like 18, 35 whenever I hear the word inmate. While young black men are incarcerated at astronomical rates, we have to be mindful about the aging prison populations during this pandemic. We literally have encaged seniors, some with respiratory issues. We have to be mindful of the women down at Logan Correctional. We can never fail to acknowledge the youth when you have someone like presiding Judge Michael Tooman blocking detention review motions from juvenile defendants in a pandemic. You have to know that this is intentional violence, so free them all. Free them all and let the people sort them out, is what the chairman said. But what does this sorting out process look like? What world will we free those mothers, fathers, siblings, and lovers too? How do we memorialize those we lost due to our negligence? And how do we support those experiencing the effects of state-sponsored cages? Fortunately, some of us have ideas and visions of a better tomorrow. Support those organizing on the inside. Follow the lead of abolitionists who make this their life work. Look to building the community and nourishing the ones you inhabit with radical frameworks. But most of all, treat people how you want to be treated on your worst day and stop calling the damn police.
Just stop calling the damn police, motherfuckers. Thank you so much, Charles. That was such a moving, beautiful writing. You're about to put me out my job. Thanks a lot. I want to remind everyone that we are back next Wednesday. It is the second installment of our series on housing, fighting for shelter in place. We'll be speaking with Representative Delia Ramirez on the legislation she was trying to push, as well as other housing activists. And return the week after that for our work on juvenile detention and incarceration of immigrant youth. I want to thank our guests one more time. Thank you all so much. We're here to support long after you guys are on the show, and I mean that. And everybody else out there, give your money to fucking Chicago Community Bond Fund. Give your money to Chicago Justice Torture Center, and show your ass up to stand by Cassandra. I know I'll be there this week, Cassandra. You can hold my ass to it, and if not, you can blast my ass on social media. I love you all. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
And we're out tonight. Thank you.